Have you ever had a project that you were passionate about, but a little too scared to make? If so, today's episode is going to be for you. My name is Guillory. I'm a comic book artist, and the purpose of this channel is to encourage, inspire, and I hope give insight into what can be sort of a strange industry. As always, I am talking about comics. Let's get to it. All right, so every week I try to tackle a topic that I think is unique to creatives, but also is universal enough to folks outside of the creative sphere to be helpful. So this week in particular, I want to talk about fear. Now, the first thing you need to know about me is I have struggled with fear pretty much my entire life. I was a short, fat, painfully shy, insecure kid. I always felt like if someone was over there laughing, they were probably laughing about me, just really, really in my head. And the fear of other people really was a problem for me, and well into adulthood. And the thing I've learned about fear is that fear is sort of like a rattlesnake. If you're hiking and you run across a snake, you will do everything in your power to avoid that snake. You will bend your entire life around that snake to not get bitten by that snake, to not experience that pain. And I think with fear of anything, if we allow it to overpower us, it will bend us. It will bend our lives. And I've seen this even with creatives, especially in the creative sphere, with a bunch of people. Creatives are usually in their heads. We come up with these worlds, these characters, and we live there. And when fear enters the picture, it really can warp what we make. And I've experienced this myself. And actually, what kind of sparked this, what got this percolating as a story for me to share with you guys, was a call that I had a few years back with a young creative who was just kind of starting out and was looking for some guidance, which I'm always happy to give. It's very humbling whenever I have a young creative reach out for advice. So we had a call, and it was a great call. The guy was super, super sweet, very bright, very talented. And at the end of the call, I noticed there was a long pause, and I had a feeling that there was a question on the other end of it. And I realized as he started to ask the question that that question was probably the reason for the entire call. And I won't reveal the question because I don't want to reveal his identity. But he asked me a specific creative question, and then he asked me, "Is it okay? Is it okay that I do this?" And there was something about the way he asked the question that really stuck with me even to this day, years later. And it's because I realized when he asked me the question, I realized why he was asking me the question. He wasn't asking me the question because he had some kind of hang up about the creative decision he made. He asked me the question because he was afraid. And really what he was asking me is, am I going to get in trouble if I do this? Are they going to come for me if I do this? Is the internet going to get angry at me if I do this? And it really, really stuck in my craw. It's been with me forever. And it's had me thinking a lot about what happens when fear enters our creative process. And what does that do to us? And is fear ultimately the best place to make art from? And I've seen this happen quite a bit. In the last 15 years of my career have been crazy. I've been in rooms with people, taken phone calls with people I never thought I would have conversations with. And it's been a crazy blessing. It's been awesome to rub shoulders with really talented people. But the thing that's been striking to me is how much of what they do is influenced by fear, and how much they kind of, many creatives, not all, but many of these people that I've talked to, whether it's in Hollywood, TV, film, comics, whatever, there tends to be sort of a checklist they're trying to stay away from because they're terrified. And they're willing to compromise their own kind of convictions and change what they want to make really for the purpose of being liked. And I don't know if that's the best place to make art from. I wrestle with that very often. Now, I get that if you're doing if you're doing work for hire, obviously that's a very different thing. Obviously, if you're doing work for hire, you are a hired gun. You are a mercenary. Your job is to make the client happy. And I think that at the end of the day, if you are work for hire, what you should be doing is making your client happy. And in fact, you should be surpassing what they even ask you to do. Give them not just what they asked for, give them what they didn't even know they wanted. Absolutely. But really what I'm talking about mostly in this episode is your passion projects, the stuff that you've been sitting on for the past 10 years. It's just been collecting dust. I've spoken to so many creatives who have books or movies or whatever that have just been collecting dust for decades, forever. And they just won't go to it. They won't take the leap. And a lot of times I've found it's fear. It tends to be fear keeping them back, whether it's fear of other people, whether it's just insecurity that they have. They have the tools to actually make the thing, but for whatever reason, this thing hasn't moved in 10 years. So I would like to focus on that today. And I think I would like to encourage you that if that's you, if you have some fear holding you back from doing that thing, I would like to address that today and the importance why it is so important that you push through that. At the end of the day, I have a very specific view of what it means to be an artist. And this is just my take. My take of being an artist is I've always viewed the artist as a person who is in the tribe, but also sort of set off to the side. Artists tend to be sort of outcasts, not completely exiled, but maybe just a little set apart. And I've always viewed artists as the kind of people that have a unique view of the world. They just see things from a different perspective, different viewpoint. And that their superpower, their gift, is being able to see what other people aren't seeing. And then being able to take what they see that other people don't see and pour it into the art. And I think that is a very valuable thing for a community and for a society, I think. And I am concerned that what happens when the guy whose job it is to sit on the wall, to be the cultural kind of touchstone, what happens when he starts making decisions in his art based on fear rather than on the truth, rather on what he's actually seeing? That concerns me. And I have to give you some backstory. I have to totally lay it out to you. A large part of what I view artists being comes not just from comics. It comes actually from stand-up comedy. See, I grew up on stand-up comedy. I have very vivid memories of my parents playing Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy on vinyl when I was maybe 6 or 7. And then as I got a little older, I discovered guys like Sam Kinison and George Carlin. And then I discovered Bill Hicks and Dave Chappelle when I was in college. And there was just something about the way they did things. There was something about the fearlessness with which they spoke. And there was something about the way that, though they weren't perfect, that they often weren't nice, and they certainly were not politically correct, their value was in the fact that they could be courageous enough to look the world in the face and just say what they actually saw, what they actually thought and believed. And that's always been really attractive to me. That's always affected how I look at the arts in my role as an artist. And your view may completely be different, but that's where I am with that. I think it's Picasso that has this phrase. He has this. It's a quote that's been attributed to Picasso, but it's been used a million different times. The artist is someone who uses lies to tell the truth, and I think that is accurate. I think that artists have a very peculiar but important role in society, and I'm concerned when we start making decisions and holding back or changing our art because we're afraid. And that's what I've been seeing more and more of. I think, and if you're in the culture, if you've been paying attention, you kind of know that's true too, to an extent. I think there's a reason why, not to throw shade at anyone, but there's a reason why most of what we see nowadays is prequels, sequels, reboots, and reimaginings. which is basically a nice way of saying we're just going to keep doing the same thing over and over again because that worked in the past. So let's do that again now. And I know that it's a complex issue. I know that there are corporate considerations. There's a lot of money involved. I totally get that. But again, I'm talking to the creatives. I'm talking to the people who have the means to make a thing. Whether or not you have the money to do it, that's another thing we can talk about. But the reality is, if you have the skills to be able to do it, I think you should, if you have a thing that you've been sitting on for a long time, that you've been holding back because you're afraid, take the leap. I think it's worth taking the leap. I think we need you to take the leap. It's something I'm trying to do in my own work. And it's scary because you don't know what's going to happen. Obviously, you guys know my opinion. If you watch previous episodes, you know my feeling on social media and some of its pitfalls. And I think the influence of social media has been very, it has definitely made us more sensitive to criticism. And it's made us more aware that we may get yelled at, and no one wants that. Everybody wants to be liked. And again, I totally get that. I want to be liked as well. But I think as artists, we're not, that's not part of the job sometimes. You know, I think a lot of times we're just here to tell the truth as we see it and to present our perspective, and people can then choose to accept it or reject it. So back to this young man who reached out to me for the phone call and asked me if it was okay to make the art he wanted to make. I replied to him, and what I tell him, I also tell you, and I tell it to myself as well, that if you have something in your heart to make, whatever it is your duty to make it. And it is your duty to make it the way you want to make it. Do not give consideration, pay absolutely no mind to the critics who will come and have an issue with whatever you make. Because critics are going to do what critics do. There's nothing you can do about that. I can't do anything about that. What I can do is control what I can control. And I can exercise wisdom. I can exercise discernment. I can measure my words and be very thoughtful in how I execute my art. That's about all I can control. So if that's you, if you have something that you've been sitting on for a while and you've been keeping silent and you haven't been putting it forward because you're a little scared, I would encourage you, as I try to do on this channel, to push through that, because that's something I'm trying to do as well. Even with this channel itself, I'm trying to push through fear. I'm trying to push through judgment. What are other people going to think when I put this online? What are potential employers going to think when I put this online? I've decided it's actually it's better to kind of cull the herd, as bad as it sounds. I would rather be accepted for who I am, or let me rephrase that. I would rather be rejected for who I am than accepted for who I am not, is where I've come to. And maybe that's where you're at as well. And maybe you're not. That's totally cool either way. But either way, if you have something you want to make, I think it behooves you. I think we need you to actually make that thing. And if you get some backlash, if people get angry, if you get some mean tweets, then I mean that's kind of part of the deal. You know, any person who's ever made anything has gotten backlash. Anyone who's ever done anything worthwhile has their share of critics. I certainly have mine, and I'm trying to ignore them. Ignore parts of what they say. Sometimes they're right. But either way, it's worth doing it. So if you have a thing, you want to make it, you've been sitting on it, you've been afraid to do it, take the leap. Take the leap. Use wisdom. Don't go sell, don't cash out your kid's college fund, but use wisdom. And I think it'll be worth it. I think it'll be some of the hardest, but some of the most fulfilling work you ever make. So that's all I got this week, guys. I hope it was helpful. As always, hit me in the comments. Let me know where I'm wrong, and let me know how I can help any way I can. Like, share, subscribe, all the usual stuff. I'll see you next week. Bye.